Gittin Daf. We begin with the Mishnah at the top of the Daf. We end just before another Mishnah. This entire discussion is about the concept of Tifsei Gittin and other stars as well. That is, writing a form without the specifics. You're allowed to do that and avoid issues of Lishma because you didn't write anything that has to be Lishma. We'll have Mishnah will bring us three opinions. The Gemara will have two ways, three and a half ways of explaining all the different parts of the Mishnah. Which we'll get into the Mechaikas between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Meir, and then we're going to try to actually see if we can decide the halacha between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Meir. So let's begin the Mishnah. The Mishnah brings three opinions as to are you allowed to write typesin. That is, we have a person who is a sefer, his business is a scribe. He writes things and he wants to have some of the documents already prepared. He doesn't have to start from scratch when someone hires him. He wants to be able to produce them fast. So he wants to write, when he has spare time, he wants to write a bunch of either Gittin or contracts of loans or contracts of sales. And he wants to have this, and then he'll fill in the details when he gets hired. So is he allowed to do that or not? So the first opinion is the Tanakama, and the Gemara is going to discuss who the Tanakama is, either Rabbi Elazar or Rabbi Meir. And the Tanakama says you're allowed to do it for Gittin, for loans, and for sales. And these are the things you have to leave out. For Gittin, you have to leave out the place where you write the name of the man, the name of the woman, the time. For a loan, you have to leave out the name of the borrower and the lender and the amount of money and the time. And for a bill of sale, for a document of sale, you have to leave out the name of the buyer and the seller, the identity of the field, and the a spot for how much money the sale is actually made for. And the opinion concludes says the reason that you can do this, and the reason that you have to do this is because of a takana. The Gemara will discuss what does it mean because of a takana. So the Tanakama is that you're allowed to do all three. Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, you're not allowed to do any of them. And the Mishnah brings Rabbi Elazar, which sounds like the first opinion couldn't be Rabbi Elazar, but the Gemara will discuss a possibility that it is. Rabbi Elazar says you're allowed to do everything except for Gittin Nashim, because it says la, of la, and it has to be lishma. And this doesn't count as lishma. Now, obviously, there's no problem with lishma on the part of the get that doesn't have the details, but it could be a gzeira that you shouldn't write any part of the get, lest you may end up writing the rest of the get as well, including the details, and write it not lishma. All right. Now, the Gemara has to go through a number of factors. First of all, who's the Tanakama's opinion? Second of all, what does it mean with Pnei HaTakana? What is this Takana? Who are we fixing for what? What exactly is the understanding? Why are you allowed to do it or not allowed to do it? And some other details as to whether this should be okay or not. So the Gemara has a number of ways, like we said, it has three or perhaps 3.5 ways of explaining what is pshat in this Mishnah. So the first way is Rav Yehuda named Shmuel. And he says this is the opinion of Rabbi Elazar, who holds Edi Mesira Karti, and therefore the essence of a get is witnesses who see it being handed from person to person. The signatures are meaningless. If you have the witnesses that are signed, that's only so that you have a record of who the Edi Mesuda, who the witnesses who saw it are. The get itself, when we say the writing of the get, refers to the document, and therefore there's definitely a concept of lishma on the document of the get. It refers, the halacha of lishma refers midairaisa to the names and to the date. It also refers to the line where it says Harei at muteres l'chol adam. That is the essence. You are permitted to every man. That is the essence of the get. That also has to be added later, and that has to be added lishma. Now, the Gemara is going to go through in a minute how this entire Mishnah is explained if it's Rabbi Elazar. The Gemara first wants to point out that this is the third Mishnah that Rabbi Yehuda said the name of Shmuel is Rabbi Elazar, and it had to change some of the Mishnah to make it fit. Here we had to add that you also have to leave out the place where it says Harei ad muteres l'chol adam. So the other two is the first case where we saw that Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel said that it's Rabbi Elazar is the place where it said that you're not supposed to write a get on something that's attached to the ground, and if you did and you detach it, it's kosher b'di'eved. That was one, and over there the Rav Yehuda Mishmuel said that is Rabbi Elazar, and he had to say that you only wrote the typhus, not the tyref. You only wrote the form of the get attached to the ground, not the specifics. The second was where he said everybody's allowed to write a get, except for, and we had a list, and on the list we had a cheresh, shaita, and katan, which we said are kosher to write a get. And over there he had to say as well that there's no issue of lishma because he didn't write the tyref. And then here, this is the third time. So the Gemara wants to know, why does he have to say it all three times? Let him say it once, and that explains them all. So where it says, the first case, he had to say, the first case is the one where it was attached to the ground. There, it's very logical that it has to be Rabbi Elazar, because there's a contradiction there. It says, don't write it if it's attached to the ground. And then it says, if you do, it's kosher. So that sounds like that it's a contradiction, and the answer to the contradiction is that you not allowed to write the Tayref, the details for sure, because that's absurd. And that only Rabbi Elazar holds away, because Rabbi Meir holds Edi Masira, Edi Chasima, Karti doesn't matter. The only thing that the Torah was referring to when it said write a get was the signature. So it doesn't matter what you do with the body of the get itself. So it has to be Rabbi Elazar. And it's saying that don't write the Toifes, Gzeir, you may write the Tayref, but if you do write the Taifes and not the Tayref, then it's kosher b'diavad. So that's very logical in that case to explain that that's Rabbi Elazar. The problem is the second case, I may say, is not so logical that it is Rabbi Elazar, because the last line in the second mission says She'in kiyum aget el b'chasama. The reason you're allowed to have a katan write the get is because the only part of the get which is significant is the signatures. That sounds like a Meir. That sounds like Edi Chasima Karti. So we explained that it's talking about where you only wrote the Taifes and not the Tayref, and it's not a problem that it says that the essence of the get is the signatures, because when it says the signatures, it's referring to the Edi Masira, which are called signatures because they often are the ones who end up signing. But that is far from logical to be able to explain that. Now, our Mishnah is even bigger chiddush, because our Mishnah, you have Rabbi Elazar in the end of the Mishnah. So that's highly unlikely that Rabbi Elazar is the same in the beginning of the Mishnah. And therefore, we need to actually spell out that it's the same individual. Now, the Gemara will say how that fits. Okay, so now, let's go through the Mishnah and see if this is Rabbi Elazar's opinion. How does this work? So, the first issue is, what does it mean mipnei hatakana? That we were matakein. Well, that means what? You were matakein what? What should the halacha have been, and what does the takana change? So the Gemara says, according to this, where if we're saying it's Rabbi Elazar, so the takana is to fix things for the cipher, for the scribe. Because since Rabbi Elazar holds Edi Masira Karti, the get has to be written lishma, and therefore you would say the Tayref li'ikuva, the rice has to be written lishma. The halacha should have been that the Taifes, not only the Tayref, but the Taifes also has to be written lishma. Gzeira, you may mess up and write the Tayref lishma. In order to help the cipher, that they shouldn't have to write from scratch every time, we wrote, the Rabbanan made a special halacha that you're allowed to write the Taifes, and we don't say that Gzeira. Now, that's the Tanakama's opinion, who is Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees, and he apostles all of them. He apostles the Taifes, he does hold the Gzeira, asking the Taifes Gzeira, you may end up doing the Tayref, and he apostles other shtarais, Gzeira, you may end up doing it by a get. Now, Rabbi Elazar was the third opinion. He says he's machsher all the other shtarais and not the get. He does make the Gzeira of Taifes because of Tayref, but he does not make a Gzeira other shtarais from the get itself. Now, the next problem is the line where it says, the reason why you can't write the Taifes is because it says v'chasav lishma. So Gemara asks, v'chasav lishma is going on the Tayref. The Tayref has written lishma. How does that teach me you can't write the Taifes? So the Gemara says you have to slightly adjust the words. Instead of saying shenemar v'chasav, it should say mishum shenemar v'chasav. Because you do have the halacha that the pasuk says v'chasav, and therefore the Tayref has written lishma, mishum, because of all that, you should not be allowed to write the Taifes either, Gzeira. And that's what Rabbi Elazar was saying, why it's possible you can't even write the Taifes for a get. Now, as far as the question of how could he have Rebbe Elazar appearing twice in the same Mishnah, saying two different things, on that, the Gemara answers it's two Tanaim arguing sort of Elazar holds. The first opinion says if Elazar does not make Xer Teifes at the Taif, and you're allowed to add the Taif, you might get. And the last opinion says if Elazar does make Xer Teifes at the Taif, and you're not allowed to write the Teifes of the get itself. So this is our first way of explaining the Mishnah, and that it is all Rebbe Elazar. Now, the Gemara's second way is Reb Shabsi quoting Chizkiah. And he says this is not about Lishma. This is Rabbi Meir. And Rabbi Meir holds there's no issue of Lishma. The only thing that has to be Lishma is the signatures. We're not talking about signatures here. Lishma is not a problem. The whole issue here is kitata. You may make fights. And that means if you allow a sefer to write a get before the husband has ordered it, what's going to end up happening is that the wife is going to find out that a get was written for her. And then she is going, that knowledge is going to destroy the marriage in the end. It could be she'll walk by and she'll